is TrueNorthTV, powered by Communitech. From Waterloo region, Ontario, Canada, to the world. The conversations you need and want to hear with interesting people on topics at the intersection of technology and humanity. Tech for good. Let's get started.
Thanks, Talia. Hello, and welcome to another episode of TrueNorthTV. I'm Iain Klugman, and I'm your host. Employee learning and workplace culture, these are terms that have taken on whole new meaning in the 2020 thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. No one is more aware of that than my guest today, Carol Leaman. She's the CEO of Axonify, a highly successful tech company right here in Waterloo region that helps companies educate frontline employees in retail, service, hospitality, and other vitally important sectors. When she acquired Axonify in 2011, it had just 2 employees. Today, it has more than 150 serving customers in more than 150 countries. Those customers include such well-known names as Walmart, Bloomingdale's, and Levi's, just to name a few. Prior to that, Carol led 3 other tech companies, the last of which, PostRank, she successfully sold to Google. We're lucky to have her on TrueNorthTV today. Welcome, Carol, to the show. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
So let's start off with an easy question. The hard ones will come later. Tell us a bit about Axonify and how you got to Axonify and where did this name come from, Axonify?
Well, great question. So Axonify is, we call it, the world's most effective learning and communications platform for the frontline. And the interesting thing is we were saying the word frontline long before frontline became a thing in 2020. And have been in a position to finally get noticed for that segment of the population. We got going actually 8 years ago with a use case that was all about frontline employees in retail and supporting them with learning and development in a way that was able to reach very disconnected, highly, widely geographically dispersed employees who turn over frequently, poorly paid, poorly trained. And it was a really successful use case, and that's what launched us into the business that we have today. And I actually bought the business with a business partner who also believed in the mission. And here we are today, 8 years later, with lots and lots of frontline focused customers. And fortunately, that's 80% of the workforce. So we're in a good place right now.
Do you think COVID has changed the way that we think about frontline workers?
I think never more than now do we all appreciate those people who can't afford not to go to work and who are not allowed to stay home by their employers. And what that means for them from a pay perspective, from a safety and security perspective, the value that they actually bring to the rest of us in life. I think the level of focus that's been brought to different segments of frontline has been long overdue and never more obvious than now. And I hope we can sustain this level of interest and connection and support for them forever.
So, you talked a bit about buying the business with a partner, Axonify, but this isn't your first rodeo. Tell us a bit about how you got here. And maybe some of the sort of interesting stops along the way.
Yeah, so I'm actually a chartered accountant, what's now known as a CPA by formal education. And so the early part of my career was doing that. And it was through that exercise I worked for a public company that bought a virtual reality company during the dot-com boom. And technology generally as a sector was very, very much in its infancy. We invested in this business and ultimately I became the CEO of that business that we had invested in. And that really launched me into running technology companies. And so there have been a few along the way and very different businesses with different products, different market segments, different types of technology. And I've seen so many shifts in, going from on-prem license-based software to the SaaS model, The whole social media thing was something that the last company I ran was deep into when social media was becoming a thing. So it's been a super interesting ride. I've seen good things, I've seen bad things, learned a ton of lessons along the way. And at the end of the day, I would say the biggest lesson I've learned is around there is a steady, I hate to say it, almost basic formula for running any business that sets it up for success and lays a foundation of success. And it really doesn't matter what the business is doing, but if you focus on getting some customers, managing your balance sheet appropriately, hiring the right people, really basic things that I am shocked so many people get wrong. But then I cut them slack because many of them are first-time entrepreneurs, not fourth-time entrepreneurs like me.
And I think it's very true. I mean, with the sort of digitization of industries in general, we're seeing a lot more similarities across different types of businesses than we saw in the past. And sort of software is part of everything at this point in time. But the question I have is around, I remember back, it would have been 2005 or 2006 or something, you were running that virtual reality company that will remain nameless. And when we cast our gaze across the population of tech companies in Waterloo region, you were the only female CEO in town. And of course, fast forward to today, where we're close to 2,000 technology companies in town, and we're seeing about 35% of our intake being female founders. Why do you think that is? What do you think's changed over the last 15 years that has really, led to this significant increase in the number of women who are interested in starting their own businesses?
Iain, I remember a lunch that you and I had about 15 years ago. And you asked me that very question: why are you the only female CEO in Kitchener-Waterloo running a tech business? And that really stuck with me because I distinctly remember what I thought then, and what I thought then has actually come true now. And I really think it comes down to, that was at a point in time where women like me, who at the time I was, mid-30s, I was socialized or brought up to believe that women took certain jobs, certain roles, and particularly in life, in the family, if you had two career-focused individuals and you had a family, the woman was typically the one who took the back seat and took time off and raised the family and all of that. And that allowed the man's career to take the front seat. And I was not in that position. I actually had a husband who allowed me to excel in my career. And he was the one who stayed home with the kids. And that was a very conscious choice, but very different. And I just felt like the generation coming after me, the way that I would socialize my children, would be very much in the vein of you can do anything, which was in fact the way I was brought up, which was unusual. And so I felt like that, naturally speaking, the way we were socializing the next generation to believe they could do anything, be anything, would result in more female founders. The fact that there was a level of focus being brought at the time by STEM programs, for example, at UW, to encourage women to go into engineering programs, that would take time to work through the system and result in the right thing coming out the other side. And then, of course, Communitech and other organizations put such a hyper focus on supporting the idea of female entrepreneurship that all of that would eventually result in more of a balance. And so I remember thinking at the time, it is just a matter of time and focus and awareness. And if we just stay at it and that continuous applied pressure, then it will change. And so here we are 15 years later, and I mean, it's a fantastic result that 35% of the intake's female. That will grow, I believe, to 50-50 and then sustain itself long term. And so it's been taken 15 years. Nothing happens overnight, but it's just awesome that it's gotten here.
It's interesting the importance of role models and legitimate career choices, right? And I think that so many of these things, as you say, do take time to change. You spend a lot of time thinking about the workplace, and as we have gone through COVID, it's been such a challenge because it's not about working from home. It's being forced home in the middle of a pandemic and having to do your regular job and care for kids and educate kids and all these challenges, many of which fall to the women. And I think for many of the women, it's been a really difficult time where they've questioned whether they even could continue to work or whether they'd have to make changes in some aspect of their lives. And it's been such a tough time for them. Is there something we need to be thinking about that's fundamentally different about the workforce or the workplace now, given what we've learned from COVID? There certainly are lots of CEOs who say, no, I don't need any more real estate. Everybody can work from home. And of course, the people who are at home are going, I just want to go to work. I just want to see people for a change. What do you think we should be thinking about now as we think about the stress and these additional challenges that are put on parents? We think about the fact that we're all Zoomed to death, and there's not even a lot of room to actually do work. How are we going to kind of make this all work? Because we've just gone through this massive change, but what do we need to be doing right now to make this make sense and make it sustainable for us as human beings?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question, and I don't think anybody has all the answers. I can certainly say from our perspective, and so interestingly, an hour ago, I was with my entire executive team, and this was the topic of conversation. And we've taken a corporate decision for the reasons you just articulated so well. We have a wide variety of employees in different personal circumstances, some of whom have young children that you simply cannot stick in front of the TV for 8 hours and work at your desk. And so we have taken the approach of a hybrid model. We are allowing people to come to work as much as they want to, and we are seeing people come into the office, of course, with all the protocols in place. And that has been a highly desirable thing for our employees, for that break from home. But one of the other things we're also talking about is for those that choose to stay at home or need to stay at home for a significant portion of the week, what are the other supports we can put in place? And do they go beyond buying them a desk or a nicer set of headphones or things that are, physical in terms of your work, but don't actually help you with other things? So I could imagine, and it all depends on your budget and the resources you have to bring to bear to this, but I can imagine businesses cropping up that somehow morph the idea of childcare into some kind of different model to support people at work. So I believe in the resiliency of humanity, and that all of, necessity is the mother of invention. And I'm sure, like us, many companies are thinking hard about how to support all the different needs in the workforce so that we're not Zoomed to death. And all of us, I can say, I'm sure, feel more overworked now than we have ever been sitting at home. And so I just think that with time, and probably over the next year, there are going to be tons of really interesting ideas that companies come up with that will be adopted by other companies. And we're certainly trying to think of our own examples that we can lead with and test. And it starts with having conversations with your employees. What do they want? What do they need? What is most impactful to them? And start there. And that's why we've reopened the office.
Well, that's really interesting, Carol, and I agree that we're going to we'll collectively figure this out. This journey isn't over yet. But one of the interesting things we've seen from a workplace perspective is this notion I talk about all the time and have for months and months, is this is this idea that proximity has become optional. And it creates threats and opportunities for us as a community and as a country as well. We have long struggled as a community at being able to hire people fast enough, and the fact we're a very, very small ecosystem relative to the other major ecosystems around the world. But of course now, it really doesn't matter where people are because we can hire them anywhere. And we're all fully trained and fully functional in every form of virtual conferencing that's known to humankind. How do you think this is going to affect the notion of workplace and the way that firm formation occurs? We don't need to be in a garage in Palo Alto anymore together. What kind of impact is this going to have on tech companies?
Yeah, that is another really good question, and something I've thought long and hard about. We're certainly seeing the workplace open up in respect of people are starting to move around now. There's a level of comfort that, okay, we're good, we're steady. And so employees who have been hunkered down, just happy to, stay the course and not necessarily look around for other opportunities, are starting to pop their heads up and go, well, if I could work for a company in Toronto and get 20% more pay, but do it from my home in Waterloo, why wouldn't I? And those companies in Toronto are suddenly going, okay, we're going to relax and we're going to start to hire again. So I think that, certainly one of the workplace values and that we value very much at Axonify is the notion of culture. And we think and act constantly trying to preserve, create, build a very, very specific cultural feeling about working at Axonify. That is going to be difficult to foster and maintain in the ways that we used to do it in the months and years ahead, because it is just a different kettle of fish as you hire people, as we have done now in the last couple of months, and they never meet anybody in person, and they don't really know what it was like to do our team lunches and to sit next to somebody and overhear them talking to a client, or having water cooler conversations over chocolate almonds. It's a very different look and feel culturally, and I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing for companies. I think the level of disconnection that an employee feels with the organization they work for might mean they just, they're looking for their next best thing. And so companies are going to have to think long and hard about how they not just attract, but retain people to, have them provide value and for you to give them value.
Yeah, I know it's fascinating in the fact that a lot of the traditional tools that we used to use as far as building high-performance teams, or building teams, building high-performance teams, building strong culture, and even you mentioned that sort of serendipitous, but the sort of iterative approach that we used to have, where we're curious about what you're working on, can I help? What do you do? That is next to impossible, having to schedule a Zoom meeting around that. You launched something at the beginning of COVID called Chamber Business Ready. Can you tell me a bit about that and what it's all about?
Yeah, so it started with just, quite honestly, trying to help the community be aware of things related to COVID. And that then morphed into, as businesses started to reopen and the regulations and protocols had been mandated, how do you do this within your business in a way that keeps people safe and subscribes to these protocols so you as a business aren't at risk? And so one of the things that we do is we communicate with disconnected, remote people who are doing all kinds of different things all day long. And so we just offered up all of the COVID-related content that we have built to anybody in the community who is interested in using it, and they can quickly log on, get their daily bite of information, and then go about their day. So it was just there to support the community and be able to communicate a consistent message, sanctioned kind of content to small businesses who often scramble to figure out what to do.
Well, thank you for doing that. Community, on behalf of the community, thank you very much for doing that. Is there, I got another question, sort of shifting gears. Do you have visibility into the data as to, are there significant shifts since COVID and what you're seeing from the data that's derived from your platform?
Oh yeah, so every single thing anybody does on Axonify becomes a data point, and that gets archived and put into the machine, and we derive many correlations and kind of themes out of that. And I would say that one of the things we have seen is, particularly with the segment we serve, which are frontline employees. So a large segment of our business is retail. And interestingly, where you have specialty retail, so these would be, companies like Foot Locker and that, sell a particular type of product versus our general merchandise retailer, versus, let's just say, a grocery retailer. So where you have physical stores that have apparel, those stores right around North America largely closed for a period of time, and they had to furlough their workers. And it is not well known that those employees typically do not have email addresses with the company. And the reason is that they turn over so frequently, the companies don't give them email addresses through which to communicate with them. And so a lot of those businesses suddenly found themselves unable to communicate with tens of thousands of people they just had to lay off. And so we saw this interesting pattern in the data of the usage of the platform shot through the roof. And it was because what they did, many of our customers had this realization that the only way we know how to reach these people on a daily basis is through this learning platform. Let's use it for daily broadcast messages and various other things and keep them engaged, so that at the point in time we're allowed to reopen again, they're still interested in coming back, and we don't have to rehire 30,000 people. So we saw that pattern. Interestingly, in other customers, for example, large rideshare customer in Southeast Asia, of course nobody's driving, and so usage completely dropped off, but then started to return with deliveries, food delivery, merchandise delivery, that sort of thing. So we see these patterns across the world, and also with the COVID content being gobbled up instantly. So people genuinely wanting consistent, quality information about what to do. Really, really interesting kind of themes and patterns out of the data that we're constantly collecting.
It's interesting. Now, you've been writing a lot, LinkedIn, et cetera, about leadership and the workplace. What's changed? What's motivated you to start to write more?
What started me writing more was I gave a talk somewhere, and somebody said to me, everything you say just is common sense. It's common sense stuff, and you're real. You don't try to pretend to be this fantastic, amazing, know-it-all leader who's got the, exact formula for everything right. And there is a willingness to admit all the things you don't know, which I do every day. And that she felt it would be of benefit and different and allow people to be real themselves if I just shared what's on my mind as far as that goes. And so, in fact, somebody coined it. I said, you should call your articles Leaman in. As in Sheryl Sandberg, leaning in, Leaman in. And which I had a good chuckle about. But, really, it's just that. At the end of the day, I have by no means all the answers, but I certainly know what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. And if that can help a much younger person, as they're figuring out leadership, I'm more than happy to spend a few minutes, banging out an article and putting a few paragraphs down and just being real about it.
No, and certainly we appreciate that and appreciate your voice. You also happen to be sitting underneath a giant doodle from when we had Patty McCord here. Of course, Patty's one of my heroes, and she is one of those leaders who everyone listens to and says, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect sense. That's just common sense." And so maybe it's about wisdom is about getting to that point where there's just clarity and simplicity, and taking really complicated ideas and making them simple. And I think the world needs more of that. So thank you for doing that. So Carol, we were talking about the opportunity and the risks associated with what this virtual world has brought us. It does beg the question, though. You've always run your companies out of Waterloo region. How come?
I think the old answers about there's talent here and there's support here from organizations like Communitech, and all of that remains true. For me now, given where I am in my career and the experience I've had in this community, for me, it's all about the people that are here. And there is it's an impossible thing to describe to anybody who isn't here. But if you're new to the community, I would say you are welcomed instantly. You immediately become part of the club, and there are no barriers to the help and the knowledge you can gain, the support that's here for you as a business. And there is something about that you just will not get anywhere else. I don't care where you go in the world. And so it's all about who's here and who's willing to help here, and those personal connections that you have with people that are, I think, always going to be true. And so you can find talent anywhere, truly, you can. But you're not going to get the feeling and be able, I still think, despite working remotely and all of that, and from home versus in an office in many cases, there's still a feeling in KW that you will not find anywhere else to get your business going and have it be successful.
And I couldn't agree more. There's something magical about small cities to begin with, and there truly is something magical about this place and what this community's been able to do over the last 200 years. It's nothing short of remarkable. I did want to take an opportunity to say thank you very much for joining us today on TrueNorthTV. And I want to take an opportunity to thank all of you for joining us today for TrueNorthTV. And we're going to be back next Tuesday with the next edition. Have a great day.
Missed an episode? Watch them on demand at TrueNorthWaterloo.com or subscribe to Communitech's YouTube channel.